So, joined by Raffaele De Vita today. How you doing, Raffa?
Doing good, thank you. Thanks for having me.
What you're doing is the second best Italian to grace Scotland.
Who's the first?
Tony Macaronis.
Oh, alright. I thought it was Massoni.
that was one I was going to use, but I left that out. So basically, just going back to the start, growing up in Italy, obviously. What would you say that was like growing up over there, and what would you say your sort of early football memories would be?
No, it was brilliant. It was all football. There wasn't any other kid that I could think of that had any other interests apart from football. So it was just football. As soon as you were out of school, it was just playing football wherever you could. It's difficult in Rome because it's not like here in Scotland where you got loads of pitches and parks and stuff where you can play. We hardly had any grass. I hardly seen grass before I moved to England, to be honest. So it was just playing on concrete between buildings and just concrete everywhere, to be honest. And it was so many kids. It was different days as well that we're not talking about. It's not 40 years ago, but still it was so much different from now. I think he's changed the last few years. You don't see so many kids out. There wasn't any. We had PlayStation, but it wasn't like now. You couldn't play online. So if you didn't have your mates, you wouldn't play that much. And so pretty much outside all the time. Yeah.
So obviously growing up a Lazio fan.
Yeah.
Obviously the Roma Lazio derby.
Yeah.
Did you manage to get to a lot of Lazio games growing up?
Yeah. It was a stage where I was going every week. Every time there was a game at the Olimpico, and it was different days. The Lazio team that we have now is nothing to be proud of, to be honest, compared to what we had back in the day. It was a brilliant team playing in Europe every year. So especially for someone that likes football, you look at these players playing for your team. It's just they were all heroes, massive players. When you watch it now, you just feel that the kind of normal players that you feel. I wouldn't say anyone could play for Lazio now, but it's just normal players. But back in the day, you had like the sort of the Nestas and Veron and
bigger names.
Yeah, massive names. So when you watch him play, it was like watching aliens play. You know what I mean? He was unbelievable.
So obviously, kind of touching on that, who would sort of be your biggest influences growing up in that Lazio team? I presume that's the ones you would have looked up to, because obviously that's who you supported.
Yeah, I think early 2000. I think when we won the Scudetto for the third time, it was probably that team. But I never really had. I wouldn't say there was one player that I looked up to in particular. I think he was more. That starting 11 going. Veron is one of them, and the strikers were Salas and Claudio Lopez and Crespo, and Nesta was probably the one because if you're a Lazio fan, if you're a Roma fan, you've got Totti. Obviously, he's your idol, and the only player that was similar to him was Nesta for us. Grew up at Lazio and was Lazio captain, but then he left and went to AC Milan. So that was a big thing for us. Not having that type of player in our team, someone that you could be brag about with other teams and with other supporters. So no, I'd probably say that there was a few. Mancini was another one. I could name 14, 15 players that I used to look up to around that time.
So obviously, youth football in Italy. How did you kind of come about? Firstly, joining a team, and how did that sort of escalate onto where you've ended up going today?
Started really early, just because all my mates at school, they were in a team, and back home, Rome is a massive place, and even it's a bit different from what I see here. I think here it's a lot. It's taken a lot less seriously in terms of, for example, here there's a lot of dads just taking the teams and taking it really easy, just like fun, and just go and play, enjoy yourself. In Italy, is really competitive at like a very young age, just because you've got so many local clubs, and every club's got their own kind of, not training ground, but they've got their own pitch and facilities and stuff. So it's very different from here. And but as I said, everyone kind of played football. So that's the first thing you'd done when you were old enough. You would ask your mum to, can I join that team because your mate maybe is there, or because they're good. And then I kind of went to 2 or 3 different teams. So then as I started doing well, I was asked to go to a better team, and progressively got better and better. And then eventually my last team was when I was 14, which was probably the the best team I was at, which was owned by Roma players, that's probably the reason why on my Wikipedia it says that I played for Roma, but it was a local club that was owned by Giuseppe Giannini, which was a big legend back home, and that was my last club before I moved to England.
I did see that, but I wanted to try and steer clear of Wikipedia. So obviously you've kind of touched on that there. Do you think that's why sort of Italian players and probably European players a lot of the time are more technically gifted? Obviously you're touched on kind of, well, better coaches, probably better facilities as well, and obviously more competitive at a younger age, rather than kind of just like parents taking teams. Yeah,
it's a good point. There's a lot of that, but I think the mentality is different. I think see, when I came over here, I always seen, even at a young age, they try to tell the kids to always do your best, work as hard as you can, don't be scared of making tackles. It's more about the physical side even when you're young. And back home, obviously for what I can remember, I can't remember everything, but what I can remember, every training session was, I'd say, 45 minutes on technique. We used to have like a concrete wall where we used to do passes left and right, volleys, half volleys, and it was constant. And that's probably one of the things that helped me when I moved to Blackburn, because if you looked at my pace back then, even now to be fair, but I was miles off it compared to some boys who were my age and they looked 15 years older than me, stronger, physically so much ahead of me, and the only thing that probably stood out was my technique and my first touch, because I was natural. I think since I was 7, 8, that's all we'd done, and honestly, even looking back, I can't remember many. Even most of the kids who don't play football now, the ones that I played with, most of them were good technically.
Yeah,
and that's one of the biggest differences from over here, I think.
So no bleep tests in Italy then?
No, there wasn't a lot of running. No, but then obviously as you get older, you have to develop that side of things. But it was more because the coaches were really. So they weren't, as I said, they weren't just dads. There were people that going through the badges and they were aiming to get better and better. They weren't just happy to be there and coach their kids and just have a bit of fun. They wanted to get better. So when we were like 12, 13, I remember we started doing shape and starting understanding like the patterns of play and different positions on the pitch. And it's something that gets criticised a lot in Scotland when I think kids get overcoached. But I understand where people are coming from with that. But I think there's an age where you need to start. You need to get coached. I think you can't just keep just running after the ball and without a purpose, basically.
Kids maybe don't need taught obviously things like shape and that when they're 8, 9 years old.
No, absolutely
not.
no.
I think that probably does happen. You'll maybe know.
Yeah, no, I agree with that.
Obviously doing your coaching now, but
I hate that as well. I think it's ridiculous, and again, if you're doing that, at least you should be a coach that knows what they're doing. But I think it's definitely too early. 9, 10, even 10, 11. But when you start getting a little bit older, when you go into 11s, not that you become a robot, but you need to understand a little bit more. Obviously, you still need to play football as much as you can. I think you need to get as many touches of the ball as you can in training and in games. But also, you need to understand, if you want to get better, you need to understand, start learning about your possession, where do you like to play and what is expected of you. I think when you're like 12, 13, I think that's the right time to start developing that as well.
Yeah, definitely. Obviously, well, the move to Blackburn, how does that come about?
So as I said, Giannini was the kind of the owner of that football club, and we used to get he had a lot of contacts, so we got a lot of people, a lot of scouts to our games and stuff, and I remember I think he was just after Christmas. They're talking 2003, so a few years ago. The coach started telling me and my dad there was teams from England coming to watch, and a few scouts that I'd seen, to be fair, I'd seen at training sessions and games. And then they kind of gave me an idea that would be going on trial to Manchester City, but Man City at that time was not a famous club. It was before before the money came and stuff. So I didn't know anything about it. For me, as I said before, like I hardly knew Rome. Like I just knew the neighbourhood where I was staying. I knew nothing about England. For me, England was, and still in Italy, like a lot of people that ask me how I'm doing, they always like refer to England as London. Like they don't really understand there's something like past London.
Yeah.
So even when they said Manchester, I was like, what part of London is that? Like I didn't know anything about where I was going to go. But then last minute, they kind of changed. So they basically told me I was going to go to Blackburn Rovers, and I was like, what is that? Like I've never heard of the club, didn't know where Blackburn was. So one of the coaches and my uncle left when my dad couldn't come, and we went in, I think it was February when we went, and it was surreal. Like it's back in the day, even now, but back in the day, the Blackburn Academy was, so they had Jack Walker. He was like a massive, one of the most important people at Blackburn. He kind of died and left all his money, went into the club, and they built this amazing academy, which is, at the time, it was one of the best in the country. I couldn't believe there was like 6 pitches. It was like, could have played snooker on it. By that time I'd never seen grass in my life. I never played on grass. So when I turned up, I was like, this is unreal. I was like a kid on Christmas Day. It was ridiculous.
It was quite a big club at that point as
yeah.
well. Obviously, still got a big fan base, obviously in the Championship now, but I mean, they'd only won the Premier League, well, in terms of football, not that long ago.
Yeah.
So I mean, obviously state of that facilities and that sort of stuff, do you think that maybe helped you to go there and sort of made your mind up for you?
Yeah, I think I would have gone anyway because it was a professional club and it was professional football, and at that age I would have been a full-time footballer, which was unbelievable. I was only just turned 15, but looking back, I don't actually know how my parents let me go, because I was like, for me there was not even a doubt, you know what I mean? I was like, I'm going.
Yeah.
But for them, you know, now, especially now that I'm a dad, I don't know if I could do it with my kid, you know. I'd never even finished school at that time. I couldn't speak a word of English, and all of a sudden I'm going to a different part of the world, and with, you know, getting looked after by random people, not knowing what I was going to do. Basically, it was a bit surreal. But I think they knew that they couldn't have tried to even say, no, you're not going. And it happened really quickly. So when I went in January, I kind of had a week there. I loved it. Well, I was just naive, you know what I mean? I just thought, I'll be playing football every day. Just what else can I ask for? I'll learn English. There's nothing else I need to complain about. But then when I went, it went really well. I played a couple of games, and as I said, the standard was unbelievable for me. Like I couldn't believe how good they were, physically as well. So we had this. Everyone lived at the training ground, and we had like the facility, the whole building was like indoor pitches, brand new gyms, so all the players were already like men, you know what I mean? They were doing gym sessions every afternoon. It was ridiculous. So at night, if you were bored, because it was like a prison, like you couldn't get out of it. But
you stayed there as well?
Yeah. So we were staying there, and then there's like a little hotel where your family can stay when you're there on trial. But all the players are there, and all you do is you finish your 2 sessions, and then you have your tea. That's another thing that was the biggest shock for me, was having food at 5. So we were having food because in Italy everything was like 8:30, 9 o'clock. So when I was like, well, is this like a snack, and then we'll get the dinner or something. So you finish at 5, and then after that you've got 5-6 hours before you go to bed, and you would just go in this indoor pitch, which was unbelievable. It was like a full size, and you just play football again. So they had nothing else going on, just football. So I went back to Rome, telling you, imagine like, I left school for a week, and all my mates, when I got back, what's it like? So for me, for me it was unbelievable. I couldn't wait to go back. And then they told my coach that they wanted to sign me, and that's when my mum and dad kind of, you know, they never obviously showed it, but I think they had a difficult few months. And then I went back we went on a tournament in Holland, and I went with the team, and that's when I kind of signed. We went back to England, and then I signed, and then in July I left. So to go full time, I signed a 4-year, so 2-year scholarship and 2-year professional, 3-year professional, sorry, and then ended up staying there for 5 years.
5 years.
Yeah.
Did you speak English when you first went over?
No.
That must have been challenging.
Italy's a bad place for it. So it's not like Scandinavia or places like Holland and that with kids. Like actually, I remember I used to do maybe an hour or 2 hours at school every week, and it was all, the cup is on the table, like the cat is under the table, like just learning lines like that, which as you can imagine, when I went to Blackburn, really didn't help me at all. So I think I managed straight away to communicate like what I needed, what I wanted, and ask questions. But as you can imagine, like in Italy, you're learning English and you're watching even like programs. They're all in like from America, so you go to Lancashire and it's like it's messing out words and like the accent is like a different language. I was like, that's not even like, I knew a little bit of English, but that's not even what I've been taught. Like even the words that I knew, they would be pronounced differently. So I was like,
you've been taught posh English?
No, not even, just like normal. But they go and say like the what's it called? We had like a couple. They used to look after the whole. They used to call the lodge. So it's like similar to a hotel, like a bed and breakfast. So they had their flat and then all the rooms, and he used to come and like tell me stuff. For example, oh, I'm going to take you to the shop, and so I couldn't understand that. I was like, take you to the shop, and it was like, I was like, I don't actually know what you're saying. But then this is the best thing that happened to me. The woman that worked in the laundry had so she was married to a guy that was half Italian, so his parents were Italian, so he knew how to speak Italian. So one day she came to me, again I didn't know what she was saying, but all I understood is like, after training, stay in your room. So I kind of like finished training, I just locked myself in the room, because that's what but obviously after that she told me after, when I could speak English, that she said, this afternoon my husband will come to see her. But all I got from that was like, just stay in your room. So I was like just sitting in a single bedroom like that, just waiting for someone, and then got a knock on the door and I opened, and this guy's like talking Italian to me. I was like, it was like a dream. I was nearly crying. I was like, oh, thank God. It's like I can actually speak to someone. And he took me to his house and he had Italian TV. And again, for me, it was like, this is unbelievable. And then he kind of, when he's for me now, he's like my second dad now. He still comes up to watch Livy games, and he's been so many times over here in England when I was at Swindon. When we go to Italy, like we always meet, because he goes there in the summer. So he's been a saviour, honestly, saved my life. And that day when, listen, we're going to Italy for the summer, this is my house key, so when you finish training, if you want to go, I'll speak to the coaches and that through my wife, and you can go and watch Italian TV for a couple of hours. It was, honestly, it was like an angel there. Like I don't think I would have lasted that long, because I was so happy to sign, but as soon as my dad left me there, I was like, oh shit, like I'm on my own here, you know what I mean? And I was really homesick, and he kind of saved me, because I felt like I had like a second family there.
Do you think you would have left if he wasn't there?
I was quite strong mentally. I never wanted to go back to Italy and be, even I was proud, you know what I mean? So I didn't want my mates to think I was a failure, that I gave up. So I think I would have stayed, but it would have made my life a misery. I think staying there with no kind of connections or anyone to turn to if I had a problem. But they'd done everything for me. And also he knew a lot of Italian people that stayed in Blackburn, because there's a big Italian community. So I still, to have that, sometimes I needed to speak my language to someone. So he was always there, and honestly, I was so lucky, because a lot of foreign lads didn't have that. There was a lot of German boys and even boys from Africa and stuff, and they never had that, and it was difficult for them.
It probably would have given you more confidence to be able to go and kick on the park as well.
100%.
Obviously, because you're finally speaking to people and learning more English.
I think actually one of the coaches, he's at Aston Villa now, he does the kids, and I spoke to him after a few years, because I was down there, we played him in the FA Cup, and he said to me, he actually told me, I could remember this, and he said, the day you spoke to John, that was his name, the day after, we all, like all the coaches like looked at each other, like he looks like a different boy, because obviously I must have looked like miserable as anything, like in training, thinking I don't understand a word, I've not made any friends. But then as soon as I spoke to him, I spent the night there watching Italian TV, having Italian food. He said I was a different boy from that day. So that just shows you just need you just feel a little bit more at home, and changes everything.
Definitely. And what would you say the sort of main cultural differences would be coming over from Italy to England? Obviously you touched on the sort of eating patterns.
Yeah.
What else would there be?
The weather, that was still my problem, I think. Still something.
Still getting used to that.
Yeah, it's still something that I really struggle with, because I love the UK. Like I love the people. I think especially the Scotland and the north of England has been a big shock, a positive shock in terms of how much people help each other, and they've got time for each other, which in Rome, like in a big city, you don't see.
Yeah.
But the weather is the only thing that would probably stop me from. See if this was a sunny place, I would never even think of going back to Italy. But I think sometimes he gets a bit difficult, the fact that like in Italy you live your life outside, while here I'm kind of always stuck in the house, you know what I mean, because I don't really want to get cold. But no, apart from that, the football is obviously a lot different. As I said, I touched on earlier, the physicality was a big problem for me, and I struggled the first few months, to be honest. I couldn't get in the under 17 team, so it was difficult. But once I got in the reserves and got a bit of confidence, I think it was a lot better. Obviously, with the team was unbelievable. It was a team full of superstars like Santa Cruz, Benny McCarthy and David Bentley and stuff. I knew I was miles away from the first team. I think, like, even looking back, maybe I was dreaming of getting close to it. I was training with the first team at times, but looking back, I was nowhere near that level. So, but apart from that, the level of coaching I got there was ridiculous. Again, it's something that I think I underestimated when I was there. I thought it was kind of normal, but then when I moved to different clubs, I realised how much I got from, you know, the coaches that were there. A couple of them were actually from Scotland, and one was Gary Boyer, who then became the first team manager, and now he's at Salford, and they taught me a lot. Every session was, they were never just putting sessions on for the sake of it. There was always, you were learning. It was like a school, always learning. So an unbelievable experience, and I was sad when I left. I felt at home. It's 5 years of my life, and as I said, I got to know a lot of people, and I still got mates that, you know, friends that teammates that became friends. So it's a big part of my life.
And obviously you've touched on the sort of first team players that were there at the time. Would any of them help you along the way?
There was two Italians when I signed. There was one I don't know, you probably won't remember it. It was in Italy. Like he moved to Blackburn for a big fee. I think he went for like 10 million. It was a big transfer, but he'd done nothing at Blackburn. His name was Ciccio Grabbi, and it was completely off his head. It was a bit like. So in Italy, you know, Cassano is like he's like that. He's just one of them players that you can't tell him there's a rule to follow. Like he was his own, like, just let me do whatever I want, but it never worked in England. But he kind of, like, they told him that, obviously I signed and stuff, and he said to one of the coaches, told my house parents, I'm going to take him out for dinner, and he was like, I was only 15, and he turned up with his Ferrari, like, smoking, and I was like, what is going on here? Like, this is unbelievable. And he was driving a Ferrari that he drove from Italy, so it was the other side of the road, and he couldn't drive. It was terrible. He was just driving in the middle of the road, and it was like every car was kind of, because obviously, as you can imagine, that's some of the big difference. But he never got used to it. He couldn't speak a word of English. He was like, not interested. Took me to this restaurant, asked me if I wanted to smoke. I was like, I'm 15. It was like, yeah, I was smoking when I was 15. I was like, no, right, okay, I don't smoke. And then obviously, when you're 15, you have to be in your bedroom for, like, say 10 o'clock, half 10, whatever. The lights actually go off, and the house parents come and check that you're in bed. So when it was getting like 10, quarter to 10, I was like, Ciccio, I need to go back. He was like, what do you mean? Like, we just got here. It was like, no, I need to be in my bed for half 10. He was like, half 10? Why is that? That's a prison. Like, how they doing that to you? I was like, that's the rules. I'm 15. I can't. I'm like, I'm 15. I kept telling him, like, I've got rules to follow. And I was like, I felt like I was the adult, and he was just a kid. And then I just remember after that, I was like, no. I told my house parents, I was like, I'm fine. He's a nice guy, but I'm all right. And then after that, Amoruso signed. And I went to his house, but he was a lot older, and he was a proper professional. Like, he was the ultimate professional.
The opposite.
Yeah, it was proper, full of himself, like, loved himself. It was all about him. I'm this, I'm that. He wasn't playing at that time. I think he played the first few months, and then he was not in the plans once Souness left. And so he was always mourning that he should have been playing and stuff. But he took me to his house. Amazing. Like, he obviously thought he was the best cook in the world. It was all him. But to be fair, his house was unbelievable. I just couldn't believe it. And looking back, like, I wish I knew a little bit more about football, because back then, for me, he was just I wouldn't say a nobody, but he was just a normal player. But I didn't know, obviously, what he was a massive player at Rangers and Fiorentina, and went for massive money to Scotland, to move to Scotland for a massive fee. So I would have asked him so many questions, but obviously I was too young to. For me, everything was normal. Even when I was training with, sometimes I would train with two guys, and for me it was like normal.
It's unbelievable.
But see, when I look back, he was out of this world. I should have just like kneeled down and kissed his feet and just say, "Oh, thanks for like letting me on the same pitch as you," because it was like a different world. Like, and even ball boying on a Saturday, like I wish, honestly, I wish I could just go back and enjoy it. Like at the time, I was just moaning because I've got a ball boy again this week. But back then, I was just like 2 yards from Santa Cruz and Pedersen and Lucas Neal and all these people. So
take it for granted a wee bit of that.
You do, because but that's what I say to the kids now. Obviously, you can't even say it because they don't understand it. But you think that's normal, like that would be the rest of your life. But 99%, unless you're unbelievable, you're a Rooney that you break when you're 16 and then you play your career at the top level. You are going to go to smaller clubs, and it's not always going to be like that. So I wish I'd even appreciated it even more.
Yeah,
to be honest.
Definitely. So how does it come about you leaving Blackburn?
So when I was in the reserves, we went up to Glasgow to play a friendly. I don't know why, but he took a few first team players. I think Franny Jeffers, and I don't know if Amo was there as well. A few first team players. So we played at what's the training ground called? The Rangers training ground. Is it not Murray Park? Is it Murray Park? Murray Park. Yeah, we went to Murray Park, and I was so I played the game. We were just waiting in the lounge and stuff, getting some food, and then I hear this guy on the phone with a big Roman accent. So like in Italy, you can tell with people from the north and the south, it's a lot stronger than here. Like obviously here you got dialects, and in Italy you know straight away where someone is from. And I was like, at that point I never even met, like apart from that guy, there was many Italians that I knew, and I thought that's a bit strange. And then he put the phone down, and I kind of went, are you from Rome? And he was like, oh yeah, what are you doing here, blah blah blah. And it turned out to be Tommaso Angelini was the guy that then bought the club with Massone. So he just said, I'm an agent, blah blah, and I just said, I'll play for Blackburn, but I'm up at the end of the season, I'm just going to leave, I need first team football, blah blah blah. And then took my number. I never thought any of it. And then in the summer I was about to sign for an Italian club because I went back, I wanted to go back, and he phoned me and said, me and this Italian businessman are taking over this club in Scotland, blah blah blah, we've got big plans and stuff. And then I just wanted to go back to the UK. I was surprised I was actually missing it. I was missing the football, and for me it was home, you know what I mean? That's the only place I played proper football. So I went back, and then I trained for a week. It was like, Levy at the time was like especially the first 2 weeks, there was so many Italians at the club. It was like players that obviously they just lasted for a couple of weeks, and then the chef was Italian, the manager obviously Italian, the staff, everyone was Italian. So it was a bit surreal, and I'd done a week, and then I signed a 3-year contract.
I'm sure the Levy fans were promised Champions League football under.
Yeah.
Under
we were promised by the manager as well sometimes. You will be in the Champions League soon. I was like, what's going on here? Like,
there's got to be a few mental stories about Massone and also the manager and stuff like that at that time.
It was mental, but it was more, I think it was easier for me I was finding it a bit more normal than other people, because I know what they're like the people from Rome, like they just act in that way. Like sometimes I'm not going to sit here and say they were good guys, because I think I'll get slaughtered by every Levy fan because they destroy the club. But they are the way of showing that they cared. It was just strange. But when you start like not paying people and people losing jobs and stuff, I just can't justify that. And but I seen Massone after a few years in Edinburgh, and I don't actually know what he was doing. I don't know whether he wanted to buy Levy again, but he was in Scotland again, and he asked me to meet him, and the way he was talking about that season, he was like, he could remember every single game, and he was like it happened yesterday. It was like, remember that game at Queen of the South, and he missed a chance, and Murray Davidson done this, and it was like, how do you remember all this? So he loved the club. He just lost control of what was happening, I think. But he knew everything about what was happening with the team. He wasn't just a guy that invested money and then he kind of ruined everything. It was invested money. He wanted to build like a proper club. He never managed to do it, and then he kind of all went wrong.
So you think he had the best intentions then?
Yeah, but it's his fault. I mean, I think they've got their own, it's their fault that things have happened, but at the same time that they wanted to be successful in their own way. Yeah. Obviously they've done it in the wrong way, but they wanted to be successful in Scotland.
So what was the sort of reaction when you find out administration hits? I
was young as well. I came back from Italy, and I checked my bank account because I had 2 different accounts, and when I was in Italy for 2 months, I would just forget about everything I had in England. It's not like now that you got apps and stuff you check. Yeah. I was only 18, 19. I wasn't even bothered about money. It was, for me, it's like I just needed what I needed to live, and that's it. I checked my bank account. It was like I had all like letters from. Sorry, I went home, and through the post. Obviously, it was 8 weeks I was off, so I was away from Scotland for 8 weeks. I had like bills from like Sky and stuff like, you've not paid, we couldn't get money off your account. And I realised like the rent and all that was coming out, but I wasn't getting paid, so I'd never got paid for 2 months. And I was like, what's going on? Like, there's something wrong here. Like, and then I started thinking, oh, maybe you don't get paid in the summer. I was that young that I didn't know what. Then I asked all the boys, I was like, some of them had been paid, some of them had not been paid. So I was like, what's going on? So I went to the secretary, and she was like, I was like, what was happening? I've not been paid. And she was like, yeah, I know. I was like, so am I getting paid? She's like, I'm sorry, I can't say anything. So then I went to Angelo, and it was like, what's going on? He was like, Raffa, there's no money at the moment. I need to ask you to this little sacrifice, and like I know you well. I know you wouldn't go, and like a Scottish boy maybe would react in a different way, but at the moment we've got loads of problems. And I was like, no, that's fine. And then in the space of a month they were away. So then 2 weeks after the club went into administration, it was mental. Like, this guy came in, got us in a room, and said, if we don't have anyone that comes in with the money, I think he'd give us a deadline, say 4 weeks, we're just gonna kind of shut the place, and that's it.
The best picture was always a Livy fan outside the stadium holding up a £20 note, trying to get my son to just fuck off, basically.
There was that. I think there was actually a lot of people that they were due about 20 quid. There was like every day in the paper. That's one thing that I felt like I couldn't understand where they were coming from when they said people were actually after them, because like after that there was, I remember reading like stuff like people that were delivering the milk were asking for like 50 quid, and I think that it kind of like the fact they were foreign played a part a little bit, because you feel that people are coming from the outside and they're taking the mick out of the club. And I think if it was a Scottish guy, then maybe try and protect it a little bit more. But to be fair, you can't argue with that. They had debts with everyone, and then problems with the council. I don't actually know how bad it was, but the worst thing, it's funny, but it's not, because we kind of, when they told us there was nothing to do, I don't know if you remember, we kind of went to the last day. We didn't have anyone. Yeah. And then McDougall came in, but at that point they kind of said, this is the last training session, lads. Tomorrow the curtains basically are going to go down. So there's people like, I think he was Chris Ennis maybe, or one of the older lads was like, what's happening with the physio room? Like, what? It's like, but this is just gonna, it's not going to be any use to anyone. So just people started like lifting medicine balls and physio beds and that, just taking it out and just like leaving with like dumbbells and bars and stuff. It was surreal.
Just bumping
it. Just taking stuff home, saying like mats and stuff like that, because obviously there wasn't a club anymore. And then that afternoon, another thing that day was, we were outside. I think there was a protest or something. I can't remember. I remember a lot of people outside, and people were getting called in the office to be told that they were being made redundant. So that was as a young lad that's never played first team football before, that was like a big shock, because I realised that was, for me, like football was a game at that time. Playing reserves with Blackburn, it was just like fun. But when you actually see people losing jobs, and it's mental. And the worst one was there was a family that I still see, to be fair. It was Elaine, Amy, and the dad was like a handyman at Livy, Big Willie. He was like doing every little job so there was a full family employed by the club, and they were in the laundry, and then they were doing all the jobs around the place, and one by one they went in and they all got made redundant. And that, looking at that, you think all of a sudden there's a family with no wage coming in. Yeah, no income. It was mental. And then seeing adults crying. Like, it was, I remember the faces and that, and it was a bit mental. Like, I felt like everyone felt really sorry for them, and it was a sad time. But at the end, it worked out alright for us, because we one thing about the UK in general for football, you get looked after. There's someone that actually looks after you in the PFA. We're brilliant. I think I actually got, in the space of like 2-3 weeks, I got all my money back that my son had ever played, and I think the PFA managed to cover that somehow. So they were brilliant with us, and thankfully McDougall came in, and then after a few weeks we found out they were in the 3rd division, which was another big shock.
Did you ever think about leaving at that point?
Yeah, but the problem with me, as soon as I signed for Livy, I'd done my cruise ship, so I kind of missed that season with Landy, and I didn't really have any interest, you know what I mean? I never played any games, and I was a kid, I didn't have anything on my CV, so I think it was a week before the start of the season, so 1 week before we're in the Championship, and then next day, first game away, I think it was Albion Rovers. You think, that's just mental. But then I didn't actually realise how low we were going, you know what I mean? But then when I went to Peterhead the first time, I was like, oh shit, like this is proper, like. And then Albion Rovers, yeah, it was a bit. But then it was mad, because we started winning. We still had a big fan base. Like, for that league, it was massive. Yeah. You still get 2,000 people at the stadium, and I think, I don't know if I'm actually imagining this, but I think we were getting a lot more people than we get now in the SPL. So at times it was like the stand behind the net was always full. Yeah. I think it was schools and kids, like.
No, that's right. They used to give away
tickets. Yeah. So there was at times we used to get like 3,000, maybe 3,500 fans. It was. I started like playing in felt like I was playing in proper games, and the stadium is brilliant. You know, it's one of the best stadiums. It's a brand new stadium compared to some of the stadiums that you see even in the SPL, in the Championship definitely. So I was playing first in football, winning games. There was actually fans coming to watch it, and it just felt like good proper football. So I started to enjoy it, and I never really complained. I never felt like I was playing at a level that I shouldn't have, because. End of the day, it was still tough, and people say, even now they say, League 2, League 1 is not a good level, but you're playing against men that still want to do their best to win the game, and it's tough and it's physical, and I think he helped me a lot, before I moved to England at the end of the 2 seasons.
Sure, there was a spell as well, don't know if you'll remember, for about 2 years I think it was. It was either the first or the second best home record in Britain. Like, all these teams, like you say, Peterheads, Albion Rovers, kept coming to London.
Yeah, no, that's what I mean. Like, you look at teams now. So an example would be Partick or Falkirk that drop into lower leagues, and with their full time, they've probably got a bigger wage than what we had at the time at Livy. And I remember, like, I don't know if we won it by 15, 20 points both seasons. It was. It just shows that for us, it kind of became normal to just win every week, but it's tough. Like, even when you go to, we're talking about Elgin like earlier, and it's a horrible place. Like, no matter what level how much better you are than them, it's always a tough game. So we've done really well. Yeah, but we had an unbelievable team, down to hell. Like, most of them were down to earth guys, and the quality was unbelievable. And again, looking back, I didn't realise how good it was to play with someone like Robbie Winters or Liam Fox, and there was a lot of good players, and it was at the end I was really glad I stayed.
Sure, around that time as well, you had Ian Russell. Don't know if it was a wee bit later, but Mark McNulty coming through as well.
He was just coming in that time, in the League 1. But honestly, I could name a lot, and I think maybe a few left after the Championship season, but even the ones that came in, Andy Halliday was another one. Well, the young boys coming in were brilliant, and Craig Barr was a massive player for us, and Roddy McKenzie. So it was a brilliant team, and I really liked the manager. Gary Boland was really good, and there was just a good atmosphere at the club, and I loved it. Honestly, I think I couldn't have gone to England and done alright at Swindon if I didn't have that behind me, because it was a tough experience.
You got any Gary Boland stories?
He was a tough guy, proper tough guy. Like, you wouldn't mess with him. He was always, I never got on I never had an argument with him. I always made sure I kept my head down, and if he had a go at me, I just took it. But there was some boys that were quite chirpy, like Andy's one of them, Andy Halliday's one of them. and I think like Bobo, the gaffer was trying to always wind him up, maybe to test him, to see, let's see what he's like, if he's got a bit about him, if he's a young boy that takes criticism, and he used to, at times we used to go like he was the worst player in training, and I think he said him once, and Andy like scored. I don't think he wanted to say, but we went, oh shock, I think he called him a bold prick or something like that. And we kind of like came out of his mouth, and you know, when you said something, you know straight away like, what have I just said?
Aye.
And you could just see his big face like going absolute like purple. I think he made his life a misery for a couple of weeks with runs, and he was a young boy, so he was like cleaning the stadium, and the young boys back then were getting treated like young boy, not now, like that they just got an easy life. Yeah, and he was proper, like they wouldn't leave the stadium until 5-6 in the afternoon. But he was he was like, when we weren't playing well, you just knew like a half time or full time would go absolutely mental. But because we were winning a lot, it never turned into like a crisis or something that would last for too long, because it was always the next game we would win, we'd play well. But it's one of them that I can see getting in a few, like when he's out, like he's just gets wound up really easily. But I seen him a couple of weeks ago when we played Cardiff Beef, and he's still the same, and some of his shouts from the bench are scary.
So you touched on it, the promotions.
Yeah.
Obviously at a canter, League 2, League 1,
yeah.
3rd and 2nd division at the time. What made you leave?
There wasn't the same budget that when I signed the league, because to be fair to them, like I stayed on a wage that was good for the championship, and I shouldn't have been on in League 1, League 2. And when my contract was basically run out, they offered me something that was a lot less, because the budget was completely different, so they just wanted to get to the end of people's contract and then kind of change everyone within a certain bracket, basically. So I kind of started looking at other things, and there was a bit of interest, because I scored a few goals that season, and I was still relatively young. I was only 21, 22, and first Falkirk came about. I think Presley was there and he wanted to sign me, but the money was still kind of the same. But it wasn't about that. I just felt that if there was a chance to go to England, I would have loved to go. And then out of nowhere, I went back home for the summer, and then my agent said, I spoke to the chairman at Swindon, and they want you to go down for a week, because they're training in Italy, because they just appointed Di Canio. I was like, no way, like Di Canio's managing now. I was like, yeah, they appointed Di Canio. I spoke to him, he knows you, he's come to watch a few games in Scotland, so you can go in pre-season with there, which was like an hour from Rome. Beautiful place. I said, fucking nice, straight away. I just tell him I'll go. Just for me, at least it was like an experience to, seeing Di Canio, like for me, he was a big idol. Like he was a big Lazio fan. We all grew up. I was too young to remember when he was at Lazio, but he's one of them people that, like the older, like your parents and older lads tell you about. He was a proper Lazio fan, that he went from being one of the ultras to be one of the best players, and then he kind of moved everywhere in England. So when I was in England, I was still watching him. When I was ball boy, I was like, every game they play against West Ham and Charlton, I was always making sure that I was there. And he's literally lives in the same place in Rome. He's quite a working class area, and it's like a 2 mile from my house. So I had like connections in terms of where he came from and stuff, and so I said yes. And then I think Falkirk were pressuring my agent, and then so my agent went to the chairman at Swindon, and he said, listen, he's got a contract waiting for him, I don't know if he can afford to come on trial. And the chairman was like, all right, I don't know what I can do, blah blah blah. And then out of nowhere he phoned him back and said, listen, we've seen enough, we'll sign him, doesn't have to come on trial. And I was like, this is a dream. And then my agent said, Di Canio's going to phone you this afternoon. So I was like, fuck. I was sweating, and I couldn't know. I was in my house, I was like, I need to get out. And I phoned my best mate at the time, and he was a big lad, so we used to go to games together. And in the car I was like, all right, we'll go for a drive or something. Di Canio's phoning him, and it's like, fuck, he's never going to phone you. He's like more excited than me. And then we just kind of forgot a couple of hours, and we were just like in the car, had a coffee, and went back in the car, and we were driving, and then the phone went off, and it was like an English number, and he like kind of like, we're all, honestly, it was like surreal. We're just looking at each other. It was like, what's going on? So I put it on loudspeaker, and he was him. I remember my mate just staring, like he wasn't even looking at me. It was like that, like mesmerised. It was, couldn't believe it. And I was just stuttering, talking shy for about 10 minutes. I was like, yeah, gaffer, yeah.
A bit like me would do.
I just couldn't believe I didn't know what to say. And then when I put the phone down, we kind of like just looked at each other for about a minute, not even say, I just kept driving. I was like, what the fuck had just happened?
Shaky hands.
Yeah, I was honest. I wasn't fit to drive at the time. I was like, we just need to stop here. And he was like, basically said that, listen, the chairman done everything. I've only watched videos, but the chairman knows you. I need your help because I know you played in Scotland for a long time, and England as well. I need that connection between us and the English boys, and for me, it's going to be. I want everyone will know about this, but I'm a perfectionist. You'll go on the pitch, knowing exactly what I want from you, but I'll be tough. And that, I was like, I just want to say, listen, like, give me any orders you want, I'll do it. Because for me, it was meeting your hero basically. But then 2 weeks after, moved to Swindon, and when we met him the first time, it was like, from that day, every day was like the first time, because he was obviously you heard a lot of stories, but every day was eventful. I just couldn't believe what was happening. He would just come out with, he always had to, he hated like a calm, relaxed day. He always had to find something to be stressed or to create a little bit of tension, or had an argument with someone. He was always like, he had to be
any examples? Yeah,
all the time. So the first, obviously I didn't know what it was going to be as a manager, so I even thought I'm just meeting my hero, but he might be a crap manager and a terrible coach and that. But then from the first session I was like, he's out of this world. Like he was stripping football back to like how your touch should be and your body possession, stuff that, like, I felt like a kid again. He was like teaching us how to control a ball. He was so much detail. He was unbelievable. And from that day, even we started terrible, but from that day I thought he's going to be, I was 100%, I would have bet anything that it would have been as big as Mourinho or Guardiola. I just couldn't believe how good he was, like in terms of the information. And you couldn't have an argument about football. See, like players sometimes say, I don't agree with you in that. You couldn't, because he will just destroy you in terms of like knowledge and stuff. So for me, from that day, I just put my head down, and I didn't start well at all. And then he moved me from being a striker to a left winger, and he kind of taught me the possession, because I'd never tracked back in my life. I can remember from Livy, and from that day, just changed my career. I think if it wasn't from him, I could have seen myself not doing great at Swindon, and then slowly fading away, and maybe stop playing. You never know, because he was tough. It was a different world, going to League Two is a tough league. It was a step up in terms of quality from the lower leagues in Scotland, obviously. But it changed my career, to be honest. And as you can hear, I still speak to a lot of people, and I hear interviews and stuff, and they all hated him, like the way how tough he was, because he didn't think you should have had anything else apart from football in your life. And I mean, like, he would, on a Friday, for example, before a game, he would sit down for about 2 hours watching videos. So you weren't allowed home until now. Like Fridays are usually an hour. You go home and relax. And we used to train lunch all together. Lunch was like, say, a big table like this, and no one could get up until the captain was finished. It was all like proper, like in the army. Like it was proper like this. And then after that, we watched a video of every single player we play against. So for example, the right back, he would just put a clip folder up, will pop up, and open that, and there'll be like 40 clips. But that would just be me. So I'd be watching that with the rest of the team, and then I would still have to go through, say, like someone like Si would have to watch who would play. Well, I couldn't care less about the centre midfielder, but I still had to watch, and it would take 2.5 hours to go through everything. He would just tell you exactly, this is what he'll be like. He's not trained on Thursday. He's trained shite on Tuesday. I was like, do you know he's Dagenham and Redbridge? Like, we're playing against random teams that you think Di Canio wouldn't even bother.
That's incredible detail for League Two.
Ridiculous.
You wouldn't even probably some clubs higher up the league so that you still wouldn't get that sort of detail.
No, especially I think see big names like this, I can see when they go down the leagues, I think they're a bit arrogant in the way, like, I'm not, they're shit players, you know what I mean, I'm not going to bother about them. But he knew, and when I'm not exaggerating, that he knew what like how they trained, if they missed any, how they played the week before, what the relationship was with the manager, if the fans liked them. So every time I played against a right back, I felt like I knew him. Like, I watched so many clips, I knew exactly. He just basically told me, go on the pitch, do this, do that, do this, do that, and that's it. And then I just had to go and do exactly what he wanted, and the game was played, basically. I didn't have to make any decisions. He was one of the managers. Yeah, all made for me, and it was the same. And I hear what I was saying earlier, that there's a lot of players that hated him, but now when they have even big players, say a Matt Ritchie or Wes Foderingham, when they talk about him, they're like, best manager I've had in my life. But they only realise it now, because it was really tough. There was no days off, and training was tough, and it was all tactical and stop and start. But after the first few weeks, and after the incident with Leon Clark, then everything kind of turned after that.
Touching on that incident, what would you say the most mental things he's done? Some stories.
I could start today and finish the next weekend, to be honest. Sometimes it was little things that would come out with, and you think, this guy's mental, like, what is he talking about? Even you'd be watching clips of the weekend before. So the clips, you watch the clips on Friday about the opposition, and then on the Monday you watch clips of yourself. So even when you played on a Saturday, and even if you won, it was even worse when you won, because he was such a perfectionist. He felt that you probably could improve more when you won, because you weren't thinking about a bad performance. You were more switched on because you wanted to watch your clips, because you thought you'd done well and stuff, and he would just go, open the folder, and if you had like 10-15, you knew you were in for a battering. So he would go every single clip, and he had this big telly, imagine all the players are there, and he would just, say it was me, pass the ball and it gets intercepted, he would just, Fabrizio, his assistant manager was Fabrizio, stop! And he would stop it, and then he used to bang, like, what are you doing, you donkey? And we just smashed his tail in, and he wasn't on the wall, so it was like on this stand, and you could just think, like, in a minute that tail is going to go on the ground. You just knew. And he used to smash it, and then he used to like recreate what you were doing, what you should have done on the pitch, say a tackle and that, and there'd be like a carpet like this, and he would just slight tackle, say, this is how you do it, or it was just like, it wasn't just the energy that you put in a meeting, it was ridiculous. He used to come out sweating and all fired up, and you just think, like, this, like, how has he got the energy to now train for 2 hours? And it would just be the same for like Tuesday we'd have a game. It would be the same on a Wednesday, because we obviously wouldn't be off on a normal day off for other people. It was just constant. But then everything would be the same on a match day after the game. We'd never switch off. It was never, right, I'll give him a bit of peace and then I'll next day. It was just constant. Like, I don't know how some people managed to go through it, but the level up, it was just so professional. I can't even explain it, but sometimes. So for example, we had this change room in Swindon. There wasn't a great training ground. We had like little change room, a bit like it is now. So now you can't be in the same change room. It's like 5 in a change room, 5 in another change room, 5 in another change room. And we had this big corridor. And his assistant, his fitness coach used to walk there and back. He was a little spy. It was just to make sure he could hear what the players were talking about. He was very tiny. He used to hide, and we could tell. It was a great guy, to be fair. I still speak. This is how good he was. He's going to the Euros with Mancini. He's one of his staff. He's a brilliant guy. So we would work with him for like 45 minutes every morning. Then we do tactics with Di Canio, and then finish with a little game. Not all the time. It could be like conditioning and then tactics, and that's it for the day. So he used to walk like up and down, and then one day I was in this change room with big boy Aidan Flint. He was at Cardiff now. He had a brilliant career, and he came in with his hat like at the back, whistling. It was like, when you relax, it's like whistling coming in. I think it was either a Monday or a Friday, a day before a game. So he didn't think nothing of it, obviously, just like coming in, getting changed, whistling and that, or singing or whatever he was doing. So we finished the session, go back to the training ground back to the stadium where we used to have food. And then one of the coaches, like Raffa, the gaffer, wants to speak to you. I was like, oh shit, what have I done? Like, I must have said something, or maybe, I don't know, because he was never he would never tell people if they weren't playing, so that was out of the question. But we had other instances where people would get called in and he would come out with something ridiculous, which I'll tell you a little example later. But he got me in and it was like, sit down. Why was Aidan Flint whistling? I was like, what the fuck are you talking? Like, I don't know. Tell me why he was whistling. I was like, Gaffer, I don't know I honestly don't know what's happening. Like, I don't know, but maybe he's happy. Why is he happy? We got a massive game tomorrow, he's whistling. And I was like, I don't know. I was like, maybe it's just, I don't know. It's like, tomorrow is Champions League final. We were playing Oldham, we were like 18th in the league. We were top 8. Tomorrow is the biggest game of the season. He's whistling. Tomorrow he doesn't play. I was like, all right. It was like, do you want me to tell him? Like, what? He was like, no, you have to tell me because you know. Tell me. I was like, I don't know why he called me. Maybe for because I'm Italian, he could ask me and I wouldn't protect him. I was like, Gaffer, I don't actually know why he was whistling. Like, I don't know what you want me to tell him. And he was like, no, it's bad. He always had this, like, talked about negative energy. So he's like, no, negative, it's just ruined my weekend. And then we go there, 1-2-0, he forgets about it, and then next day would be something else. Like, it would be like this all the time. And what I was saying, that example is, one of the boys was playing every week. His name was Callum Kennedy. He was left back, playing every week. We turned up on a Tuesday, done the team the day before. We kind of knew he was playing, and he was always in the starting 11 because he was the only like kind of played every week. And he gives us the team and Carly's not in it and not even on the bench. So we all looking at him was like, what the fuck have we done? Like, he was like, usually the players knew, like they know like what's that, maybe they've been told before, but obviously it was like why am I not playing? So then we get changed and we were all kind of like baffled, and he was like, lads, what's happening? Why am I not playing? Then one of the coaches comes in, like, Paolo wants to speak to you. So he goes there and he's away for like half an hour or something, 20 minutes. He comes back in. No, I actually doesn't even come back in. He's after the game because then he just kind of leaves, and then like, what's happened to Cal and that? And like after the game, the next day, whenever he was, he came in and he was like telling us what happened. And basically, Di Canio, like, as soon as he went into the room, Di Canio had this big protein shake. You know, the big ones with it's like a big bodybuilder in front of the at the front, and he was like, "You've been taking this?" And Carl was like, "Yeah." Like, I told the physio to buy one for me because I take it all the time. And he was like, around April, that's what he hated. He hated like when the season was coming towards the end, because people think about the holidays and that. You're taking this because you're thinking about Ibiza and Malta. I don't know why he said Malta. He was like, you're thinking about Malta and Ibiza in the summer. You want to get big, you want to get strong. It's like, I've been taking this all my life. Like, it's not about weights. It's like, I feel like I waste a lot of energy during games, so I take this after. So he thought it was a joke, and then he started going mental. Apparently, like nearly like put him up on the wall. Like, you are finished with me. You want to become you're not a football player. He kind of went on a rant. It's like, you'll never play for this football club again, just because he took a protein shake, which was normal in that. Like, I've always done it at Livy as well. Like, the physio was actually telling us, if you do the gym, you don't have time to go home and get some food. Get this protein shake, bit of milk. Like, it was normal. So every time someone got called in, it was like, it could be the end of the world, because you just didn't know what was going to happen. So that's honestly, if I say for 2 years, every single day. And then when he got towards the end, it was even more mental, because he kind of lost his head. The new owners came in, and they sold Matt Ritchie, and he was like disappearing and that, and then he was telling us, he used to come in and then telling us what was happening. It was like, these new owners, they've put spies on me, and I've got my dog, like during the night I wake up with my dog, I come out of the house naked and I scream to see where they are. He was like obsessed. He thought like people were following him and stuff. And then one day we're in the restaurant, we used to eat together all the time with some of the players. I think I was with Adam Drooney, one of the boys that were in Swindon, and we went to a restaurant and we're like looking up the Sky Sports, and like Di Canio's left the club. It was like, we couldn't believe it. And then we were top of the league at that time, League One, and that was, for me, I was devastated, because I felt that for a couple of days everyone was like, you know when you're at school, when you're a kid and the teacher's missing, you feel like, I can do what I want, because I had put one of the older lads in charge for like a week, and it was like, honestly, like a holiday. But then after that, the Scottish guy came in, Kevin McDonald, and kind of lost a lot of motivation, and we, to be fair, not just me, we lost a lot of games, and we're top of the league. We finished 6th, and we just scraped in the playoffs, and then we lost against Brentford in the semi-final. So that I'm 100%, obviously you don't know what football about. 99% sure that we'd have got promoted to the Championship if he'd have stayed, but he couldn't understand why the new owners weren't doing what, because the old chairman loved him. So even when he nearly battered Leon Clark, and the next day, like any other club, the manager gets sacked. Well, he's like nearly punched the guy. And next day, he's like turned up, and he was like, we thought like I was just going to come and apologise, and because Leon Clark wasn't even allowed back in the changing room. He went home with his kit and his boots. So the next day we thought he's going to apologise, said he's lost his head, sorry. He got us in a circle and he was like, lads, if you see your friend, you tell him that if I see him again, I will kill him. Like, I was like, what the fuck?
I think he's joking, but he's been.
No, I said it's like I will kill him. He's like, I will kill him. I was like, that's when we knew he's never going to get sacked first, and we can't mess with him. And then from that day we won every game, and until he left, it was 2 unbelievable seasons. Sad the way he ended, because he loved the club. He's one of them guys that he gets really attached to, like the people and the club, and he's like proper. You could see the way he played, with the way he was at West Ham, at Lazio. He wants to be like the main guy. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So he was a bit sad, but he was a brilliant. For me, it was 2 brilliant seasons.
Yeah, so obviously you went up if he'd stayed.
100%. We were battering teams. League One was even. To be fair, the team we had was ridiculous.
Quite a few have went on to a higher level.
Yeah. But even obviously there's players that people know up here because they came to Scotland. Say Wes and there was Si was one of them. Si should still be playing at a higher level, but he's decided to do other things. But Paul Caddis was brilliant. Even Caddis is another example. Captain, played every game, came back for pre-season, wasn't fit. He kind of spent his whole summer in Kilmarnock doing nothing, and got us in a meeting. You're not my captain anymore. After a year that he's been like the best player in the league, everyone wanted him in England. You're not my captain. Alan McCormack, you're my captain now. Next day, Caddis on a free to Birmingham. You lose your captain to Birmingham, higher league. Yeah. From League 2, just promoted to League 1, going to a Championship, a massive club, more money. Caddis was like, I'm laughing here. I'm going. If he doesn't want me, I'm betting myself anyway and playing in a higher league. But that's how he was. He didn't care. Yeah. Matty was one of them. Matty was brilliant. Obviously, he's playing at top level now. But if he had a bad game, he would just, you're not playing. I'll take you off. And he didn't care. Like, that's one thing with him. He couldn't, you see managers now, they're always like so loyal to like people because they kind of got a relationship with them. They're scared of dropping them in case they turn the changing room against him. But he didn't care. Like, it was him. He always said always going like, I'm your leader, and like he was proper we were soldiers. He was like the main guy. He always used to say, I don't want you to love me, I just want you to follow me. Like, he was like a proper like he was going to war. So it was a bit mental, but I learned so much of him, like in terms of like tactics, and that's when I realised that to be a manager, you need to, at the top level, you need to know football inside out, and it opened my eyes on so many things. Like he actually changed me from like someone that was just kicking a ball to being a professional. Like, for him, like, you have to live your life with just football, like nothing else. I don't think he was sleeping even. And another thing he'd done is his staff. He brought staff over from Italy, and he told them they weren't allowed to have their families over. He just said that. Just to concentrate. Yeah, no, you basically live with me. Like, we eat together, we watch games together. And funny was, most of them were like proper like this, but one, like the goalie coach, was a big kid. It was like he just wanted to mess about all the time. And one morning, it's like in the physio, like half asleep. I was like, "What's going on, Dom? Like, what's happening with you?" I was like, we had to like spend the night with Paolo again. I was like, "What happened?" It was like, well, it was about 12:30 and he didn't want to go to bed, so we had to watch this game on telly. It was like Serie D. He had Italian TV. It's like Serie D. It's like below the conference, and he's like watching Di Canio's like watching the game, and they're all like, "Fuck's sake, I just want to go home." And Dom was saying that basically, I was watching the game and I was kind of drifting away, like I was falling asleep, and all of a sudden, like, I close my eyes and I hear this guy going mental, And he obviously wakes up, opens his eyes, and this Di Canio smashing the telly and turning to Dom. It's like, Dom, why the keeper is behaving like this? If my keeper, I swear, if Wes does this on Saturday, I will kill you, lad. And he's like, he wasn't even watching the game. I was like, okay, that's fine. That's the sort of like level he was at. He was just 100 like football 24/7. Yeah, and some of them couldn't keep up with that.
No.
And the goalie coach was one of them. Was like, I've had enough here. Like I can't even relax watching someone else's game that he just turns it on me and the way I coach Wes and that. So he was funny. Like looking back, it's funny, but honestly, it was some stressful days. Like you just used to go home and couldn't switch off because you just knew it was constant.
Yeah. Obviously, we all know Si now. Open goal. What's the best stories you'd have about playing with him, and what was he like to play with?
Si was a brilliant. Honestly, like I couldn't on the pitch. He was a brilliant player. Like I was baffled when he signed for Peterhead, and I know he had obviously a difficult year at Dundee when he left, but when he left England, but I just thought he could. The fact that he's not playing the Championship, at least I think he's criminal. Like he was a proper good player, and he's funny because even with Di Canio, he said it himself. Like he wasn't in shape. He came back. He was a bit of a disgrace. Like he was a bit overweight, and he had a lot of carry on in his head. And he said he just thought that Di Canio would come in and would just mess about, but he wasn't ready to change his life at that point. But then, obviously, he realised that he had to pull his finger out, and the players that were playing in front of him weren't as good as him. And when he got his chance, he was unbelievable. But what I remember about him, like the first thing is it's calmed down a little bit now with the clothes he wears. Like when I went down to Swindon, he was like, I thought he was like a fancy dress day. Like the first few days, I was like, this guy's not real. Like he didn't care. He was like the stuff he was wearing. I was like, because I think him and his missus had a vintage shop that would like selling stuff online, so he was obsessed with like he used to go to like markets and stuff and just buy like random gear and doing it up and stuff. I couldn't believe it. I was baffled that he would be. I looked at him as like, this guy can't be a footballer, like dressed like that. I looked at him and everyone told me that he wasn't a good footballer. I don't know why, but then on the pitch I hardly ever seen him losing the ball in 2 years. Like he was just so, not just simple passes, he was just always making clever passes, and when he had to keep it, he just knew how to keep it. And but what was funny about him, every game, most games, he'd be in the tunnel like 5 minutes before the game. He would look at me and go, I'm dreading this. I can't wait for 4:45. I was like, why? He was like, I hate it. I don't know whether he was joking, but then he'd go on the pitch and he'd be man of the match. I'm thinking, what is this guy? Like someone like him, he knew how good he was. He would be buzzing to get on the pitch and show how good he was. Not like if you're not that confident and you don't want to be on the ball, you go, fucking hell, like I'm dreading this. It was always like that. And then he was obsessed with. Sometimes he'd come out with some shit you think he's not right in the head. Like when we were out talking to fans, or say not on a night out, even out for a meal, and fans would come up to speak to him, and when he found out that people like say like we were talking to someone, it's like, what do you do? And the guy said, oh, I'm a postman. It came up in a couple of times, and his eyes were just like, oh my god, that's amazing, like that's my dream. And some of them thought he was taking the piss. It was like, right, well, are you winding me up? Like you're on, I don't know how much you're on, but you're a footballer. And it was like, mate, I swear to God, it's my dream. Like I just, it's the best job in the world, and people couldn't believe it. Like he was
definitely think he was taking the piss.
No, but then he done it again, and I was like, what's your problem, mate? Have you ever seen a sad postman? I was like, I don't fucking know, but you're a footballer. And it's like, no, but you get up at 4, you finish by 11, 12. It's the best job in the world. You always talk to people, you're sociable. I was like, but I think he was actually serious. So some of his ideas were mental. So then I'm not surprised he went and done this, because it's all about like what happens in the changing room, and he loved that. He's a funny guy. Like he was always up to something, but not like there's some players that I've come across, like Michael Gardine is one of them. It'd be pranks, but like some of them were disgusting, and some like, you know what I mean, stuff that. Aye. But Si was like funny, proper funny. It was stuff he used to say, and it was just like the main character in the changing room.
It always seems a good laugh.
Yeah.
But then obviously you end up leaving Swindon, Bradford, Cheltenham.
Yeah.
and then you end up coming back up
Yeah.
to Scotland, to Ross County.
Yeah.
Why Scotland again?
I kind of after Ross County, that's the first time I really felt homesick. I was like stuck in Inverness. I loved the club, brilliant people, but just in the middle of nowhere. And I started hating that A9. Every time I had to go home, I was every time I had to go home, it was like I was just the thought of it. I was like going to 3 hours to get to Edinburgh. From Edinburgh, sometimes I had to go to London. I have to go to a different airport just to go to Italy. When I was in England, it would be like a 2-hour flight.
Aye.
So I started to dread going home for a weekend, like just because I knew sometimes I'd be home for like half a day and then back on the plane. It was just ridiculous, and it was hard to get people over. So even my mum and my brother came for Christmas, I would have to go and pick them up in Edinburgh. So 3 hours there, 3 hours back. I was like, I feel too far away from home here. So I kind of thought about going back. So I went back in the summer, and I started training with this team in equivalent of League One in Italy, and it was in Rome, a beautiful place near the beach. But like it was just mental. Like I realised what Italy is like. Is especially in the lower leagues, there's a lot of clubs that have got financial problems, instability. Like you don't know who the manager is, you don't know who the owner is.
Yeah.
Like teams go bankrupt every year. There's like at that level, there's like 10 teams that don't have enough money or enough requirements to basically take part in the league. So the federation just going up. We're not happy with that. Just relegated, and sometimes they just disappear, and then there'll be new teams new clubs the next season. So it was a bit mental. I thought this doesn't feel professional, and the lads were all like between themselves. They were like complaining about when are we getting paid and that. And I thought this is not what. Like if it has to be my job, at least you need to know that you're getting paid for it, and that's where I thought like I'm gonna try and go back to Scotland again. But it was late. It was like September, October by the time I decided to go back to Scotland. And I spoke to a guy that I knew from actually related to Kyle Jacobs, Keegan's brother, and he spoke to Davey at the club, and he said that listen, like we'll have him. Obviously, you know it's League One, so I just went there because I wanted to get back playing, and
there wasn't again.
Yeah, there wasn't a better place than Livy in terms of going back. You know, when I spend a good, happy period of my life. So that's how it happened.
Did you expect it to go as well as it did? And then
No, it's mental. Just it's hard to explain it. Every time we'd done something, he was always the objective was a lot like what. For example, we get promoted from League One to Championship, and we basically got told, even when I signed my contract, Davey said, for us, winning the league is finishing ninth. That's all we want. Like, if we finish 8th, even better. But like, as long as we don't go down, give ourselves the best chance to stay in this league. If it's playoffs, it's playoffs. And then, like, we get promoted, and even in League One, it was like, all right, we want to be up there for as long as possible, because there wasn't any. Obviously, we were full time, but there was still a lot of decent clubs and a lot of young players. You say Pittman was just coming in.
Yeah.
Craig Halkett was just released by Rangers. Danny Mullen was a young boy, and we didn't have any divine right to win that league. So everything we'd done, we exceeded the expectations in everything we'd done. But to get promoted to the SPL was a bit surreal, and what they've done the last 2 years is incredible.
How do you think it ended up going so well in the Championship? And at what point did you start kind of thinking we can maybe get the playoffs here?
There's a number of reasons. I think obviously there's certain things that need to go your way. First of all, getting players like, I think when Davey signed Sean Byrne, Craig Halkett, Decky, even Decky to a certain extent became later, Liam Kelly, Scott Pittman from Bowness or wherever he was playing. You knew, obviously Davey knew how to identify good talent, but he couldn't have known that they would have turned to be. They're all playing at SPL level, most of them. And that was in League One. To get
better as well, which probably helped them. We're hungry to then get into 100%. The Premiership.
But one thing that Davey's good at, and even though he's not got he's got a different background in terms of coaching, he's not gone through professional football and that, but he's got something that other managers maybe don't have, which is to identify not just good players, but players that would fit in well with the type of environment, like the culture that's at the club.
Yeah.
Because if you get people that, he's tried it, for example, say with Stokes when he came in. Yeah, he's one perfect example. Is probably him. Just doesn't work. Every player that came in was proper, down to earth, not take themselves too much, like too serious. Fight like honestly, work as hard as they could every single day. Not complain about how hard the day was, because we used to do double sessions every day.
Double, triple sessions.
Yeah, and it's a combination of that. I think the main thing was that, and then managing to keep most of that team, because I think what I've found in football is that if you stay with the same players for a couple of seasons, it's nearly automatically you start playing better. And obviously never thought that we would be so successful, but definitely plays a part.
Yeah, and obviously, what was David Hopkin like as well? He was the manager at the time.
Brilliant. Yeah, I loved him. Not just on the pitch, off the pitch, he was the first manager that I felt I got to an age where obviously I was a little bit older, so I was less shy. Like say with Gary Bowen or say De Canio was an exception because no one could talk to him. But like Jim McIntyre, even at Ross County, I felt like I couldn't really approach him and talk like about normal things. But Hoppy was one of the people that you feel like you were talking to a normal person, just not your manager, just someone else that you could talk to him about anything. I really enjoyed that part. I think he made me feel a lot more comfortable around the place, and I think that helps on the pitch as well. And on the pitch, he was very he just knew what he wanted. Sometimes people have been talking about how the style of play was, and it wasn't pretty at times. But to be fair, when they say we just lumped it forward, it's not. It doesn't really tell the whole story. We were direct, but we had a lot of attacking players that could then create things. So you can't win leagues just by lumping it forward. You need to have.
Everyone was always up on the second balls and that as well.
Yeah,
so
that's the thing.
Part of how Levy played.
Yeah, but then when he got to, Pittman and Sean are two players that, if you look at them, they could keep the ball for fun. They could keep the ball in the fun box. You know what I mean? They're not just rats. They're not just people that just go around, get the ball back and just lump it forward. They're players that can actually play football, but they're so humble that whatever you ask them to do, they do it. Because Pitts is a brilliant example. Like Davey said a couple of times, he's been there 8 years and he still comes in the change room with his head down. If it's the first time he's ever worked in the place, it's like he could literally, not that it's the right thing to do, but you could come in and be a bit, not arrogant, but you could tell the young boys to do this for you, or be a bit disrespectful, and people do that because they think, I've got the right. I played 300 games, whatever. But he's such a down to earth guy. He's obviously naturally really shy, but the respect he's got for other people, he doesn't feel any more important than anyone else, despite the fact that even though he's proved that he's shown that he's a massive player for the club. So having people like him, I think he's massive. So
he's probably one of the most underrated players in the country, in my opinion, anyway.
But I don't think he's underrated. I think he's just him that he doesn't realise how much what people think of him. If you speak to him, and you tell him, have you heard this interest from Aberdeen? He'd be like, I don't know. He wouldn't even brag about it, or because people use that sometimes to get the confidence up and behave differently with people around him. But he's down to earth. He's not really asking. He just enjoys his football. He's got no distractions and just enjoys what he's doing. He's not really driven by money. It doesn't seem like he's driven by money. He could have got a move. Let's be honest. He's been a brilliant player. He could have, if he had a bit of, if he really wanted, he could have gone to England and his agent would have found him a club, because he's been outstanding. To play every week at that level, and I can, even watching games now, he never lets you down. He can maybe have a quiet game, but he's one of them players that what he's giving you, and he's never going to make a mistake or just be someone would have to carry him through the game. He plays his part and he does it every week, and he's been doing it for, I don't know if it's been maybe 6 years now.
Yeah, maybe even a wee bit longer.
Yeah, exactly.
But then we get into the playoffs. I remember it turning up at Tannadice in the semi-final, and Hardy, who was probably the main goal scorer at the time in terms of open play, was injured, and I think going up in the bus, everyone was like, we've kind of made
massive,
it this far.
Big loss, yeah.
Then you for wing back that season, you end up front in the playoffs and score within about 70 seconds.
Yeah, it was unbelievable. But what no one ever said before is the day before was like a big crisis at the training ground, because we used to do shape. So this is what strange about what Davey used to. I don't know if he does it now, but the Friday would be like usually just set pieces and just walk through things. But him and Hoppy would set up like 11v11, and it would be a trial match basically. Like it felt like a trial match. So if you didn't play well in that, or you were miles off it, you knew you weren't playing on Saturday. Like they used to base. I don't know whether they'd done it. They knew that obviously that team, but they wanted people like on Friday you needed to be on it. Like it doesn't happen anywhere else. Usually it's a day that you just do the final things, set pieces, and maybe say you want to try throw-ins or anything like that. But he was a proper, like, he used to go back in the change room, you felt like you needed a day off. And then we used to go and win on a Saturday. So that day, I don't know why the lights gone on. No, that day was, so we were also, I don't know why, there was people that were, maybe because they wanted to be in the team, they were going a bit heavy with tackles and that. And there was like, started being arguments on the pitch, and I can't remember who it was, maybe Jacko or Jackson Longridge and someone else who were like kept like hitting each other, and people were like, we weren't playing well. Like it didn't look like a team that was like preparing for a big game the next day. Everyone was like pissed off with each other, and just like little, not just arguments, people shouting at each other and stuff. And then Hoppy stopped the training session and went absolutely mental, like proper. It's like, I'll fucking get rid of every single one of you. I don't think you're too important for the club, and I'll just play with the kids tomorrow. Do you think I care? And then people kept arguing and stuff. And then he gave a big speech about, I think his son was going through something really bad with his girlfriend or his wife or something, and she was going through a tough time. I think she had some disease. I can't remember what, but she was in hospital. And he's like, think about like the people that don't get to play in these games, and you behaving like little shits and that. So we kind of went into the changing room where people were still pissed off. We didn't know, and I remember he said, I was walking back with him, and it was like, I'll drop him. We're like all big players, and we were talking about like the players that played every week. And it's like, I don't give a fuck, I'll just drop him, I'll drop the goalie, drop him. We kind of turn up Paternidise thinking, is he still going to be in the mood? But then that just shows what we were like. It worked, because we were on the pitch, we were like possessed, and there was a big rivalry with Dundee United that year, because they always felt they were this top team, they shouldn't have been there. So we always felt we had something to prove, and then we went 1-0 up, and then it was a strange game. All of a sudden they scored again. But even a 2-1, we just still felt like we're actually holding our own against Dundee United. I remember, I think I came off at that time, but I was thinking like, that's not too bad. 2-1, I think we'll do them at home. And that's
what everyone in the crowd was saying as well.
We'd have been happy with it, yeah.
Can deal with that. I think both times that season we beat them at home.
Yeah.
So everyone knew we were capable of it.
Because I think we got beat there a couple of times.
We did.
Yeah, 3-0.
3-0 and 2-0.
Yeah.
2-0 was the last game of the season just before that. And that's when they thought,
we'll batter him, and then Josh scores and Pittman scores. It was ridiculous.
Season, amazing,
unbelievable. And then the second leg was, at the start, it was personally, obviously, it was unbelievable. It was like kick off, and there was still people walking in, and like looking around, and I'm obviously playing wide. I was still playing up front, but it was like started wide
left.
Yeah, they kind of had kick off, and I was thinking, there's people like nearly walking on the pitch.
They were,
I couldn't believe it.
Down the corner flags.
Yeah. I was like, what's going on here? I think they had to delay it for a few minutes. I didn't expect so many people. And he started brilliant, left goal scores, and then I kind of knew who I was playing against, because when I played against before, that Ralston, he's always been like that with me. He's that type of player. He wants to make the wingers obviously know that he's there. And I remember after 5 minutes, I gave the ball back, and he kind of smashed me, and I thought, there we go. Like, I know what he's going to be like all game. And the next one, I get the ball played back to me, or I'm trying to protect him, and I just felt the worst pain I've ever felt in my life, and I didn't know where he came from. I couldn't see him. I just went down, but I think he kind of got the ball with it. So I'm like lying down, and Davey's like screaming in my face, "Get up!" But honestly, it's agony. Like I never felt anything like that in my life. And then, like what happens with cruciates, obviously I had a bit of experience. The pain eased off, and it kind of went numb. But that's the physio was like, "Oh, you okay to play?" But in that moment, like I wanted to go back, but I knew in my head, like I think I'd done my cruciate here. So I went back on the pitch, and I actually scored. I was offside. I scored with my, like I couldn't walk. Like I was just trying to, I don't know what I was trying to do, because I knew I'd done my cruciate. I knew, but I just didn't want to come off. You know, your head is telling you.
Especially in such a big game.
Yeah, exactly. You think, you're not thinking straight, because if someone, like, if I look back, I don't know what I was trying to do. And then I remember Josh kind of like done one of his usual runs, put it in, I sprinted in the box, and then I tried to break, and that's the one where you feel your knee. And I just felt like something, like it's not right. So I kind of
to go off. Yeah,
so I walked around the pitch and went in, and it's mad though, because we won. In my head I thought, like, it's mad. If I think back, I knew at that point I was going to be out for a year, so I was devastated. But because we were going such a big like period and stuff, so many big games, it felt like something special was about to happen. I kind of like concentrated on the team, and I still enjoyed it. But then I think it was the day after, I think I went for a scan the day we played Partick, and then I just made it back for kick-off just to watch the boys, and that's when I found out. One of the young boys took me there, and the surgeon kind of like touched my knee, and straight away went like, "Listen, the cruciate's done, but you're not just done your cruciate, you've done your medial, you've done your cartilage." It was like the worst of the worst, and he said, "We can't even operate straight away because your leg is not completely straight, so you need to wear this." I had like a big brace from my hip to my ankle, and I keep that for 2 months, and then we'll get an op if you got better. So it wasn't even even guaranteed I would get an op. And then obviously that made it so much easier for me, like, to accept everything. The fact that we got promoted to the SPL, like massive, because when I was doing my rehab, I thought, I was watching the lads playing Rangers, Celtic, and that gave me a big drive to push and keep going.
There's a few boys out at the same time as well. I think Lee, going by social media, you and Lee Miller were massive for each other. Yeah, no, Lee was each other going. Yeah, that's when I built a brilliant relationship with him. I got to know him a lot more, and he's one of the best, one of our best mates in football. I just done a course with him all year through the PFA. He's been brilliant, and also hearing from him, he's gone through. It's the first time I played for him as well, and having like someone that is not my age, maybe a little bit older, but you played with him, and now he's gone into management and stuff. It's been brilliant to watch what he's been doing, and now he's found that, and he's a brilliant guy. He was massive for Livingston in terms of, that's another example of what Davey brought in. Maybe a player that point to prove, down to earth. Like, he would never ever mention a game he's played in. He's played in the Europa League against UEFA Cup against Bayern Munich. He's played in England at the top level. He would never mention. It's like his career just started at 36. He was a brilliant guy, someone that helped the young boys so much. Us two, he obviously got he'd done his PCL, which was a little bit less than me in terms of recovery, but he's such a positive guy. So even if he's having a day where he's feeling low, he would never show it. He would just like, while if I'm miserable, I can be miserable. Like, I just complain about everything. Maybe not being a bad guy around the place, but within myself, I'm like, this is like, I can't do it. But he would just get you through it. And there's been some days where he was like really dull, but especially with Cheb, like the fitness coach, the kit man, he's also someone that takes the gym sessions, and he's a bodybuilder. So every day you'd be stuck with him for an hour, and you'd go, like, I'm not a big fan of the gym, but Lee's a bit of a beast, so he was kind of enjoying it as well. But for me, it was like I was going through so much pain through his sessions that I was so much in pain that I couldn't even feel pain anymore. Like, it's hard to explain. Like, I got to a point where I was in agony, and I was like, whatever you give me, like, I can't get any worse than this. So every day was like a mental battle. Yeah. For 9 months, it was tough. It seemed like it was tough.
Yeah.
And obviously, club legend as well. Watching you go through it, I think everyone kind of wanted to be watching you in the Premiership
Yeah, that was a big, but it was difficult for me because when you get that injury, when I got it when I was 19, he was completely different. Like I knew that would have been harder to get back in it. First because I was older and I lost maybe a yard or two through that injury, and also because by that time we were established in the SPL. We knew we were staying up, and David was bringing in a lot of good players. So I knew it was going to be difficult, but I tried my best. I managed to come on for a few games, but I kind of knew that I would have had to leave soon after.
Yeah, and obviously a couple of loan spells, Partick, Falkirk.
Yeah.
And then now at Edinburgh City. How are you finding that?
I'm loving it. I think it's been one of the hardest things since I got back to Livy after Falkirk. That was probably the hardest time of my career in terms of what I've gone through. I wasn't part of the plans, and I was kind of going in and feeling a bit an outcast, you know what I mean? I wasn't really doing anything. I never felt that. Livy always felt an important part of it, whether it was on the pitch or off the pitch. But at that point I was kind of going to the training ground and hiding from people because I didn't want to be there. I just felt like I was a weight on their shoulders kind of thing. But it was difficult because the SPL was back and no one else was back at that time, so I had to keep training, and I have to be honest, I hated it and I couldn't wait to leave, because like every footballer, you want to be a part of it, and I bet Davey wanted me to go because he didn't want to see me like that, but he's obviously built the team from the season before, a top six team that was getting better and better, and I've had no complaints. So when the team started going back, it was becoming difficult to people what they could spend and what they could do, and then I started playing with the reserves. Sometimes it's something that I didn't want at my age, so I was like, listen, whatever, I said to my agent, whatever is close to where I stayed, Livingston, Bathgate, I'll just go. So the manager at Edinburgh phoned me, and I didn't even think. I was like, yes, like as long as I can come and train like straight away, I just want to get out of it. But the thought of going part-time was like the scariest thing I've ever experienced, because like we'd gone through everything I'd done since the first day I was at Blackburn. I've woke up every single day and just played football.
Always been full-time.
Yeah, and before that signed for Edinburgh, and the thought of like my agent was saying, what about part-time, because I didn't want to go to a Morton or Queen of the South where I was full-time, but it was teams that couldn't afford full-time wages basically. Yeah. So I said, listen, we'll look at part-time. I'll get my head round it. But I used to go to bed and like I used to wake up at night and like sweating, like thinking, what am I doing? Like I'm going part-time for the first time in my life. But then it's crazy because it was like the idea, like thinking about it was a lot worse than how it happened, because on top of that, like I've got other interests now, and I managed to make sure that I'm not just like playing part-time, I have nothing else. I've actually got a lot of things, and on top of the baby that's just born, so I loved it, and the club is fantastic. And the first part wasn't easy in terms of the results, like we didn't really perform. The manager was brilliant, but then we came back from the second lockdown and he took the session, and then he went, oh lads, by the way, just wanted to say that I'm not your manager anymore, I took a different job at the club. And he was like, he's a legend of the club, you know. He took him from for him it was like a big project, so he wasn't just a manager just come in. He came in and changed the whole like the youth team and the community. We properly works for the club, not just the first team. Yeah. And then I was like, this is not good, because I really liked him. And then I thought, especially in League Two, you know what it's like. You get, you know, managers with no experience, or maybe just like
some appointment that ended up coming.
That's what I mean. Like when we went to training ground, no one knew. They kept us so quiet, like make sure that no one knew anything. We usually hear rumours and that. So we like started warming up, and then the manager said, I'll take the session today and then we'll announce the manager soon. So we didn't expect anyone to come in that day, and it was like, lads, before we start the session, I'll introduce you to the new manager. And we see Gary Naysmith coming. It was like everyone like out of nowhere. And as I said before, I was doing an interview, and it was funny because like some of the young boys, obviously, like you don't realise that I'm actually an old guy now. You know what I mean? For me, I know Gary Naysmith is. I knew him I've seen him play like in the Prem. But they were like, who's this guy? Like, has he ever played football before? I was like, mate, he's got 50 caps for
I know,
Scotland.
I think he's played about 100 odd times for Everton as well.
He's got like 200 games in the Prem. Oh really? I never heard of him before. Like, fuck me, like I'm getting old here. But no, he's just what we needed. Like, he's not really complicated. He's made things really simple. And he just looked at the league and said, listen, we're in a shocking position. We shouldn't be here for the quality we've got. Because if you look at the players we've got, like he's a good League Two team, and there's a lot of players from Hibs and play that played full time. And he said it's not acceptable. So we've got 5 points just to catch up, basically to get to the top 5. We'll just look at that. So that was the first thing. Then we got there, and then we were winning every week pretty much, because I think we only lost a couple of games. And then we got into the split. We're still there, and then we finished the season second. Don't know how, because if you looked at the league in February, March when we got back, it was impossible. But we kind of, you know what football's like. Sometimes it just clicks, and he's managed to. And the funny thing is, he's never kept the same team. So he's not just been. It's not like he's found. We had this at Ross County when I went there. He's found these 11 players, and he kept that, and that he clicked and never changed one player. Like, everyone was fit every week. But this time he's been, like, he's obviously had to. We play like 2 games a week, so he had to use different players, and everyone he's come in and performed for him. So there's not been a standout performer. Just been everyone chipping in.
Sometimes that's what you need, especially going into the playoffs. You just kind of need everyone at it.
100%. Bit of form.
That's massive for you just now. Obviously won the first leg.
100%, yeah. And he's and again, I think we've been the draw was the fact that we got Elgin. I think has been good, because going back to Livy as well when we went in the playoffs, I think it was good for us to play Dundee United, because that season we could beat them at home.
Yeah.
But it would have been Dunfermline if they beat, and we couldn't beat them that season.
Couldn't beat them at all.
We always say, when I speak to, say, Sean or Keegs, we always say we're 100% sure that if we got Dunfermline, it would have been a complete different story. And that's probably not a team that's not even as good as Dundee United, but there's some teams that you can't beat, and Elgin is like that with us. Every time we play them this season, we beat them every single time. So they've got that in their heads. Maybe mentally he's a bit, it can have a little influence. So
don't jinx it yet.
Yeah, I'm right. If we get beat on, we'll just delete the whole podcast. But we, I think they would have preferred probably to play Stranraer maybe, or be the 4th and play. Because also the way it's done, you know, you played Dumbarton, and sometimes, you know, it's a team that's not. It's not won many games, so sometimes, like we played against Partick, they were really low on confidence, so it's anything can happen. So hopefully we need to win on Tuesday and see what happens.
Well, top man, Raffa, thanks a lot for
coming
on.
It was a pleasure.
All the best in the playoffs.
Thank you very much. You too.
Thank you.
Cheers.